A short summary of the cold start problem, written by Andrew Chen and summarized and read to you by the Inner Revolution, saving you time on your journey to wisdom. Subscribe to our channel for more free audiobook summaries now. If there's a secret to success in the tech industry, it's a thorough understanding of the network effect. The more users you gain, the more valuable your product becomes and the easier it is to profit and grow. But if bigger equals better, is it even possible for a company starting from scratch to compete with established tech giants? In the cold start problem, venture capitalist and former Uber executive Andrew Chen explains how to do exactly that, build a billion-dollar tech company from the ground up. In particular, this approach will help you avoid the most common pitfall for tech startups, what Chen calls the cold start problem. When your network is small, it's extremely difficult to grow. We'll discuss this in more detail later. To research the cold start problem, Chen conducted over 100 interviews with some of his most experienced professional contacts, including the founders of successful startups such as Instagram, Tinder, and Airbnb. In the book, he condenses their wisdom into a detailed roadmap, describing what tech startups need to do to evolve into industry titans. In this guide, we'll first give some background on what a network-based business is. We'll then explain how to build a startup that uses the network effect to compete with the established giants in your industry. Specifically, we'll explain how to scale your business through Chen's 5 stages of scaling a tech startup. Step number 1. Create your first subnetwork. Step number 2. Repeatedly replicate that subnetwork. Step number 3. Streamline and accelerate growth. Step number 4. Push through negative effects of growth. Step number 5. Ward off challenges. Short form note: Chen's 5-step organization of this process is effective as a chronological step-by-step guide to founding a tech startup, giving you the ideas you need to succeed in the order you need them. We've combined and rearranged some of Chen's ideas to more closely fit this chronological order and avoid repetition. In our commentary, we'll explore tips from other books about scaling small businesses, including blitzscaling and crossing the chasm. Additionally, we'll provide further advice on how to market your product, incentivize your users to promote it, and ensure it remains profitable. Background: what is a network-based business? Before explaining the first step in founding a tech startup, we need to establish some basic background information about network-based businesses. According to Chen, a network-based business is any product or service that involves interactions between users and gains value as more people use it. For instance, the more users a social media app has, the more likely it is that you'll have friends who use it, and the more connection and enjoyment you'll get out of using that app. Therefore, the more valuable the app is to you. All of the most ubiquitous and profitable tech products are network-based. Social media platforms, online marketplaces, and multiplayer video games all take advantage of the network effect, and they often have enormous networks of millions of users. Short form note: in Exponential Organizations, Salim Ismail offers another explanation as to why many tech companies grow rapidly and succeed. Ismail argues that while traditional organizations profit from scarce resources, for instance, how many computers they can build and sell, today's rapid growth tech organizations generate value from the information they get from users, which is a never-ending and infinitely valuable resource. This may in turn explain why the most profitable tech products are all network-based. Companies with large networks have a huge user base from which they can harvest valuable information. Step number 1. Create your first subnetwork. Chen argues that the first step of creating a business at the massive scale we just described is to create a single network that's as small as possible and still functional. Different types of businesses will require different sizes of networks to meet this threshold. Products that only involve isolated one-to-one interactions can function fine with just 2 users, while products focused around group interaction and networking may need a few dozen people interacting before the experience becomes satisfying enough to function well. Over time, you'll create countless independent yet interconnected networks, which we'll call subnetworks. Chen refers to them as atomic networks. Collectively, these subnetworks will make up your massive, profitable network. Starting with a single successful subnetwork and expanding is far easier than trying to launch an enormous, market-dominating network all at once. Counterpoint, prioritize speed over stability. It's possible that Chen recommends steadily scaling to prioritize stability in the early days of your business. In blitzscaling, Chris Yeh and Reid Hoffman disagree with prioritizing stability in a startup, arguing that sometimes, doing so makes growth too slow. Instead, it's worth sacrificing stability for the opportunity and grow as quickly as possible and become the first big player in a new market. Why is this sometimes the ideal strategy? Even if you ignore the leader-favoring network effects Chen describes, which we'll discuss in detail later, early market leaders possess advantages that make it nearly impossible for other firms to compete. For example, the most talented employees and investors want to align themselves with the organization that's concretely winning. This talent advantage helps whatever company is on top to continue dominating. Here are a few tips for how to get your first subnetwork up and running. Tip number 1. Attract a group of users all at once. First, Chen asserts that you need to get a group of users to join a subnetwork all at once to achieve network stability quickly. Otherwise, that subnetwork is doomed to fizzle out and fail. As we've seen in earlier examples, the minimum number of users you need to have a functional subnetwork differs depending on your product. Chen refers to this minimum number of users as your subnetwork's tipping point. Short form note, Chen uses the phrase tipping point to describe two similar, yet distinct ideas. The first, as we've established, is the point at which a subnetwork has enough users to function well. The second, which we'll cover later, is the point at which you have enough subnetworks accelerating the growth of your whole network to dominate the market. For clarity, we'll use the term subnetwork stability to describe the former idea and growth explosion to describe the latter. Once you hit subnetwork stability, users will regularly use your product and may share it with others, giving you a stable or growing user base. However, Chen warns that if at any point a subnetwork doesn't have enough users to achieve stability, the few users it does have will flee. The dysfunctional product and the subnetwork will collapse. For example, if enough people from a friend group leave a social network, there will no longer be enough content from friends for the app to be enjoyable, and the rest of the friend group will all delete it. Short form note, arguably, the number of people in a given subnetwork isn't the only factor that determines whether it will survive. Certain kinds of people can have a remarkable influence on whether a subnetwork becomes stable or collapses. In The Tipping Point, Malcolm Gladwell argues that even one special person can have an outsized influence on the behavior of groups, in this case, whether people start and keep using your product, allowing the subnetwork to succeed. For example, if you're a connector, you're gifted at making friends from many different communities, so you're likely to know more people who'd like to join the subnetwork. Thus, a smaller subnetwork that includes many connectors may survive, while a bigger subnetwork with none may collapse. Tip number 2. Target a niche group, at first. As we've established, to reach subnetwork stability, an entire group of interacting users must join at the same time. Chen argues that the best way to accomplish this is to design your product for an extremely specific group of users. This could be an internet community of users who share a niche hobby, a single team within a company, or even the attendees of a single event. By designing your product for a single existing group, you can ensure that 1. Your product fits their needs, and 2. The users in your subnetwork will have several other people in the subnetwork they want to interact with. With these conditions met, Chen asserts that your users will form a stable subnetwork, making it far easier for you to expand your network in the future. Your product doesn't have to serve a niche audience forever. Eventually, once you've attracted enough subnetworks of niche users, greater network effects will take effect, and your network as a whole will be valuable enough to attract a broader audience, as we'll see later. Aim for niches big enough to be profitable. In Crossing the Chasm, Jeffrey Moore agrees with Chen that the best way to build a successful startup is to begin with a niche audience and later expand to a broader mainstream market. However, Moore disagrees with Chen on a key point. In Chen's eyes, no network is too small as long as it's stable. since you can scale up stable networks and convert those huge networks into massive profits later. In contrast, More advises exclusively aiming for niches that are profitable enough to power your expansion. Unlike Chen, the main reason why More suggests designing your product for a niche is that it's far easier to dominate a niche market and start making money than it is to try and scrape together profit in a mainstream market. This is because markets are largely winner-take-all, with outsized profits for the market leader, and it's easier to become the leader in a niche market. One big reason why it's easier to become a niche market leader is that users in niche markets communicate much more closely with each other than the members of mainstream markets. Thus, if your product is good, word will spread, and it'll quickly be adopted by a far bigger group than if you targeted more generic users. Targeting a niche group helps you challenge market leaders. Chen notes that in particular, aiming for a niche user base is the primary way startups can overturn large, established networks, which serve a more general audience. Networks that try to include everyone can't cater specifically to every group that uses their product. By stepping in to create the ideal product for an underserved niche, you can attract full subnetworks away from your competitor. For example, if you want to compete with Kickstarter, you could start by catering your crowdfunding app to filmmakers specifically. If you can give movie makers a fundraising experience that's significantly better than Kickstarter, that whole community will switch. Perhaps you can include a more specialized discovery system that helps passionate movie fans more easily find and fund projects they're interested in. Short-form note: in The Innovator's Dilemma, Clayton Christensen further details why it's possible to steal niches from larger competitors. Corporations choose not to compete over niche markets. Larger businesses have far greater overhead costs than startups do, and they must earn much higher profits than startups to maintain their ambitious growth targets. For these reasons, small niche markets aren't profitable enough for large companies to justify spending time and money addressing their unique needs. These companies have to focus on more profitable mainstream markets. Thus, they intentionally underserve niche markets, which new startups can use to their advantage. Tip number 3. Keep the product simple. How do you design a product that makes users want to keep using it and form subnetworks? Chen advises you to make your product extremely simple, simple to understand, simple to use, and simple to explain to others. In particular, your product should perform one simple function perfectly rather than aim to do many things well. Why focus on a single function? Chen states that keeping your product simple makes it easier to attract and retain users, expanding your network and vastly increasing its value. Maintaining simplicity makes it clear exactly what your product does, and users who easily understand what a product is are more likely to use it. Further, making the product simple to use increases the likelihood that they'll learn how to use it and continue to use it. Finally, making the product simple to explain increases the chances that users will share it with each other. Use simple marketing to promote your simple product. To effectively use the simplicity of your product to leverage your network's expansion, you'll need branding and marketing that communicates that simplicity. In Building a Story Brand, Donald Miller explains how to condense your marketing messaging down to the bare essentials that compel customers to take action and engage with your product. As we've just noted, Chen asserts that to promote growth, you need your audience to immediately understand what your product is, how they can use it, and how they can explain it to others. Miller claims that the most effective way to make this happen is to outline a story to use as the basis of all your brand messaging. Imagine that your customer is the main character and identify something they want that's important to their well-being. Then, think of a problem standing in their way and describe how your product can empower them to overcome it. Filtering your marketing through this story ensures that it communicates only the information that directly leads to growth, what your product is and how it can help users. Because people are always on the lookout for tools to help them solve their problems, marketing that follows this story pattern will catch their attention. In contrast, Miller notes that most marketing includes irrelevant information that doesn't directly explain how users can solve their problems and improve their lives. Additionally, Miller asserts that your customers will eventually internalize your brand story and repeat it when someone they know needs to solve the same problem they had, further promoting network growth. Tip number 4. Cater to your difficult-to-attract users. Often, the users of network-based products form two distinct categories, according to Chen. For instance, online marketplaces serve both sellers and buyers, rideshare apps serve both drivers and riders, and social networks serve both people who post content and lurkers who just consume it. In most cases, one of these types of users will be more difficult to attract to your product than the other. Because you need both types of users for your subnetwork to succeed, a lack of these scarcer, difficult to attract users, which Chen calls the hard side of your network, will often be what holds you back from achieving network stability. Therefore, design your product to appeal to these users as much as possible. To win over your difficult-to-attract users, Chen recommends deeply understanding their motivations. What are they looking to get out of your product, and how can you give as much of it as possible to them? They may be using your product to earn money, to claim attention or social status, or to just have fun. Making your product as rewarding and enjoyable as possible for these users is key to achieving network stability. You must resolve all bottlenecks like this one. The problem of difficult-to-attract users is just one example of what's sometimes called a bottleneck in the field of systems thinking, the part of your system that imposes a limit on production and growth. In The Great Mental Models Volume 3, Rhiannon Beaubien and Rosie Weiss note that it's impossible to get rid of all your bottlenecks. There will always be something impeding your growth, and ignoring it will prevent you from growing even if you're doing everything else right. Therefore, your job is to constantly identify the new bottlenecks that are holding you back and work to resolve them one after another. In this case, if you've successfully analyzed the needs of your difficult-to-attract users and established a system that attracts more of them than you need, and you're still not growing, identify the new bottleneck in the system as soon as possible. For instance, something about your product may be driving away users you typically expect to be easy to attract. Step number 2. Repeatedly replicate that subnetwork. Once you've built a functioning product and established your first subnetwork, Chen explains that the next step is to do the same again, start another subnetwork and repeat. With each new subnetwork you establish, your next subnetwork will be easier and faster to build, creating exponential growth toward your goal of establishing the biggest network in the market. We'll discuss exactly how each subnetwork enhances growth a little later. Chen asserts that once you hit a certain number of subnetworks, you'll begin growing fast enough to become a legitimate competitor to the current industry leader. This is the growth explosion. As mentioned earlier, Chen refers to this stage as the tipping point. Chen notes that while you're trying to reach the growth explosion, the strategies you employ to build subnetworks don't have to be scalable or cost-effective. After growth takes off, you can cease unprofitable strategies and recoup this early heavy investment by leveraging your large, profitable network. Although these unprofitable strategies can be risky, they can empower you to dominate an entire market extremely quickly. Networks that never become profitable. Chen states that in this stage of subnetwork replication, you're allowed to be unprofitable for the sake of growth, and after you've built a network, you need to start turning major profits. However, in practice, many of the largest tech firms behave differently. Despite having hit their growth explosions years ago and boasting millions upon millions of users, many of today's largest tech startups are still unprofitable, kept afloat primarily through outside investments. For over 10 years, experts have been warning about the risk of a tech industry economic bubble similar to the dot-com bubble of the late 90s. They've predicted that, at any moment, investors will pull out of tech ventures that aren't earning enough profit, causing tech businesses to collapse all at once and sparking a major economic recession. However, unexpectedly, the investments have kept coming in. Investors continue to purchase billions of dollars worth of equity in tech startups, and the market continues to value these networks highly. It's uncertain how long this trend will continue, but for now, it seems that you can afford to prioritize growth over profits at your tech startup indefinitely. Chen recommends refining a single repeatable process for launching new subnetworks. In the next few sections, we'll detail several possible options for this process, potential strategies you can use to spread your high-quality product to new subnetworks and then phase out after. You've achieved growth. You can use one or more of these strategies at once. Find a combination that works for your product. Strategy number 1. Pay users to use your product. One simple strategy Chen offers to quickly and effectively create subnetworks is to pay people to use your product. For example, freelance labor marketplace TaskRabbit offers its laborers a bonus of $25 after they complete their first task. Another common way startups often pay users to use their product is to make it free for all users, with the option for users to pay for premium features. Each free user costs your company money to serve, but they spur enough growth in the number of premium users that it's profitable overall. Short form note: if you choose to embrace the massive upfront cost of paying users or making your product free to use, you'll likely need to raise money from outside investors to fund it. To decide whether or not to seek investors, consider some pros and cons. Investors often have a wealth of business experience and can offer expert counsel to help you make wise decisions. However, once investors buy a stake in your company, they gain the right to vote on company decisions. Losing some control over these decisions can force you to compromise your original vision for the company. Strategy number 2. Artificially inflate your network. Another strategy Chen offers to spark early growth is for you and your employees to temporarily participate in the network to make it seem bigger than it is. This inflates the value of your product to attract users until your network grows big enough to sustain itself. For example, imagine you're launching an app that lets users find people close to them to play board games with. Before you have enough users willing to host gaming meetups themselves, you might ask your employees to host several events to make your network seem active and attractive to new users. Short form note: although participating in a network to make it seem bigger to users can attract a sizable user base, take care not to misrepresent the size of your network to investors. Doing so undermines the trust necessary for a long-term relationship with investors, and if your exaggerations are extreme enough, they could constitute fraud. Strategy number 3. Only let users join by invitation. A third strategy Chen recommends for launching new subnetworks is prohibiting users from joining unless they have an invitation from an existing user. The upfront cost of this strategy is limiting user growth, which at first seems like the opposite of what your business wants. However, this strategy encourages a more sustainable kind of growth, because users give invitations to people they know. They are more likely to attract users who share similar backgrounds and interests. This makes them more likely to interact with one another in subnetworks, which is necessary to achieve subnetwork stability. To illustrate, let's return to our example of an app that helps people find board game groups. By making this app invite-only, it'll spread among people who know each other, who are more likely to live in the same city and like the same games. This will create lasting, stable subnetworks. In contrast, if you advertise your app to everyone, the majority of users may join only to find that no one around them has the app or no one near them wants to play their favorite game. Because the app doesn't function for them, they'll delete the app immediately, after joining, leaving you with no users at all. Short form note: brands with non-networked products have been experimenting with invite-only access to their wares, too. For instance, when the luxury activewear brand Wone first began, it forced customers to reach out and request approval directly from the Wone team before they could purchase any clothes. By communicating directly with every customer and getting to know many of them personally, the team turned their store into a community, creating a new kind of value. Consequently, shoppers spread the word about the brand, allowing their customer base to grow without any traditional paid marketing. Step number 3. Streamline and accelerate growth. Once you've successfully launched a number of subnetworks, you'll hit the growth explosion. This is when across all your subnetworks, you have enough users for the network effect to kick in with gusto, accelerating growth to the point where you can challenge the market leader in your industry. Chen states that at this stage, you can shift your focus away from manually starting new subnetworks and instead work to refine your product in ways that amplify the network effect. This allows you to grow your user base faster than you could ever imagine. Short form note: Although Chen assumes that the readers of his book want to grow their company into an industry-dominating giant, you may want to keep your business intentionally small and simply stop at this step. In Anything You Want, Derek Sivers describes how he turned down weekly offers from firms who wanted to invest in his startup and help him expand. His rationale for doing so was that rapid expansion can sometimes distract you from giving the best possible product to your existing customers, which is the key to not only financial success but also fulfillment. To explain how to rapidly grow your company, we need to break down exactly how the network effect drives growth. Chen explains that having a bigger network makes it easier for you to 1. Attract new users, 2. Retain existing users, and 3. Profit more from the users you have. We'll discuss each of these aspects of the network effect in turn. It should be your goal to optimize each one. Goal number 1. Optimize network growth. First, Chen asserts that the larger your user base, the easier it is to attract more new users. If you have more users, more people will share your product with their personal contacts, creating naturally accelerating growth. This word-of-mouth advertising is more effective and more economical than traditional paid marketing. To optimize your network growth, refine your product in ways that make users more likely to show it to others. Chen suggests implementing features in the product that naturally expand the network. For example, TikTok allows users to export and share videos outside of the app. The company places its logo in the exported video so that viewers know if they want more videos like that, they can join TikTok. Short form note: to optimize network growth, it's not enough to simply give users the ability to expand your network by using and sharing your product, you must also give them an incentive to do so. In Contagious, Jonah Berger describes different kinds of value you can offer to users. For sharing your product. By making your product interesting or cool, you can give users social currency, making them seem interesting and cool for knowing about it. Similarly, by making your product scarce or exclusive, people will feel special to be included in its user base, giving them an incentive to brag about it to their friends. Goal number 2. Optimize network preservation. Chen explains that the second positive aspect of the network effect is that the more users you have, the easier it is to make a product compelling enough for users to continue using it. This is because having more users means you have more user behavior to monitor. Analyzing this data gives you the insights you need to make your product more alluring. To optimize your network preservation, Chen recommends identifying which customers spend the most time on your product and then experimenting to discover which aspects of your product influence them to stick around. Use this information to refine your product and make it even more compelling. To illustrate this idea, let's return to our board game app scenario. By analyzing user data, you may discover that users who play 2 or more different games are 300% more likely to use the app for 6 months or more than users who play just 1 game. With this in mind, you could add a Discover New Games feature to the main menu of your app and track whether this encourages more users to play multiple games. A low-budget alternative: conversations with customers. If you want to refine your product to be more engaging but you don't have the time or resources to analyze data and run experiments like Chen suggests, you can gain a wealth of relevant information from simply talking to customers face-to-face. In the Mom test, Rob Fitzpatrick explains that customer conversations can be a remarkably reliable guide to making successful product development decisions. Fitzpatrick recommends keeping your discussions focused on objective facts about your customers' past behavior rather than on their opinions, preferences, or predictions, which they often misreport out of politeness or lack of self-awareness. For example, if your product is a social network, you could start by asking a customer, "When was the last time you opened our app?" If it's been more than a week or 2, signaling a lack of engagement, you could ask, "What's the last social networking app you've used? And did you post something when you used it or just browse?" The goal of these questions is to learn about your customers' desires and the habitual way they currently fulfill those desires. Once you've done this, you can tailor your product to more consistently fulfill those desires, making it more engaging. In this example, you might discover that your users are more interested in browsing than they are posting, so you decide to develop a more engaging browsing experience. Goal number 3. Optimize network monetization. Third, Chen explains that the more users you have, the easier it is to make money from your product. Even ignoring the fact that more users means more paying customers, a large network is much more valuable to users than a small network, and users are willing to pay more for it as your network grows in size. To optimize your network monetization, give your users the opportunity to pay extra for additional network-based features so that as your network grows, these premium features become more valuable. For instance, your board game app could allow group organizers to pay for more visibility on their postings. This premium feature becomes more valuable as the number of group seekers on the network increases, so the app leverages the increased network effect to get more users to pay. Don't stress out about raising your prices. As your network advances and you refine your product, it becomes more valuable, so it's perfectly reasonable you would charge more for it. However, as Chris Guillebeau describes in the $100 Startup, the owners of small startups often hesitate to raise their prices out of fear that their current customers will grow frustrated and quit buying from them. Guillebeau reassures his readers that customers have come to expect occasional price increases. The vast majority of the time, price increases can have an enormous impact on your profits while barely disturbing your customer base. Guillebeau also recommends charging more than you think you should if you choose a tiered pricing model. He suggests not only offering customers a premium tier option but also offering a super premium tier that's far more expensive than you would expect them to buy. This way, you not only make more money whenever anyone decides to invest in that tier, but you also leverage the anchor effect to make your standard premium tier price feel like more of a deal in comparison. Step number 4. Push through negative effects of growth. If you've optimized your product to take advantage of all aspects of the network effect, your user base will skyrocket, and you'll find yourself in a highly profitable, if not totally dominant, market position. However, Chen warns that at a certain point, extreme growth instigates a unique set of new problems. If you don't take steps to solve these problems, they'll degrade the quality of your product and halt your rapid growth. Short form note, because there will always be problems for you to solve, even after you've achieved success by growing your company into a market leader, trying to solve all the major problems your company faces will likely cause you to feel burned out. For this reason, in Clockwork, Mike Michalowicz recommends designing your business so your team can successfully run it without your direct input. This way, you can take vacations as necessary to preserve your physical and mental health and renew your motivation to build a great business. Let's take a look at 3 problems uniquely inherent to large networks and explain how to resolve them to maintain growth. Problem number 1, market saturation. At a certain point, your network will reach a natural maximum size. Chen explains that this occurs when you've effectively captured the entire market. All the users that would feasibly use your product are already using it. This is called market saturation. To solve this problem, Chen argues that you must innovate beyond your original idea, creating new features or products that do one of 2 things, either target new kinds of users and integrate them into your existing network, or offer new paid features to the users you already have. Both strategies allow you to tap into new revenue streams and continue growing your company. To illustrate, let's return to our board game app example. Once everyone in your market, social board gamers, is using your app, you'll need to expand into a new market. You could target a new kind of user by expanding your app into a tool for hobbyists of all kinds, or you could offer a new paid feature to your existing users, for instance, turning your app into a platform that lets users play board games with each other online. Market saturation shouldn't be your first assumption. Take care not to make big, risky business decisions like targeting new users or introducing new features until you're sure that your market is saturated. In How Brands Grow, Byron Sharp argues that often, entrepreneurs falsely assume they've become the leaders of a saturated market. They fail to recognize that they're competing in a much bigger market than they think they are, Consequently, they set sales goals that are too low for the market they're selling in. This complacency prevents them from diagnosing flaws with their business that keep them from attracting more customers. For example, if user growth for your language learning app has stagnated, don't jump to the conclusion that the language learning market is all tapped out. Instead, consider that there may be obstacles dissuading users in some demographics from using your product. In this case, perhaps your app's cartoonish design or beginner-focused advertising is keeping more serious language learners from using your app. To avoid making this mistake, Sharp recommends making your target audience as broad as possible, aim to recruit everyone who might find value in your product, across all demographics. Then, set aggressive growth targets until you're the clear market leader. For example, if you're running a social network, don't assume the market is saturated until you have a user base as big as Facebook's. Problem number 2. Community dilution. According to Chen, another problem that occurs when your network reaches a certain size is community dilution, when certain kinds of users joining your network make it less valuable. This occurs when you have an influx of malicious users, such as scammers, abusers, and trolls. But it can also happen simply when your product goes more mainstream. Users who are accustomed to interacting with a specific close community may leave the platform if a broader audience is likely to be there. For example, this is arguably what happened to Facebook. When it fully saturated the market, many younger users didn't want everything they posted to be seen by loose acquaintances and older relatives, so they fled to Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok. Depending on your product, one potential solution to community dilution is to allow users to create their own subnetworks. Then, if one subnetwork becomes diluted with people that ruin a user's experience, they can create another one. For example, users can create private Snapchat stories and handpick which of their friends can see them. You'll also likely need tight moderation tools to regulate malicious users abusing your network. Since it's difficult to manually moderate a large network, Chen suggests creating automated moderation tools as well as giving users the ability to flag malicious users for manual moderation. Short form note: when regulating the malicious use of your product, be cautious and intentional about what content to remove. Many social networks have been criticized for heavy-handed moderation that some users deem to be censorship. To avoid this criticism, publish a transparent set of rules governing what actions are allowed, and make sure to apply them consistently across your network. Shifting user motivations can dilute your community. Even if you give users the tools to create their own subnetworks, community dilution is arguably inevitable if users' motivations to use the platform fundamentally change. For instance, some people argue that when a social network gets big enough, users begin to care more about building an audience than connecting with others on a personal level. This causes a drastic shift in the network's culture that's arguably impossible to undo. Allowing users to create their own subnetworks may further exacerbate this shift, as it allows them to create forums purely devoted to their broadcasting. For example, although users can use Snapchat stories to keep in touch with their friends, influencers use them to create content channels with millions of followers. This new lucrative goal incentivizes users to care more about gaining a following than connecting with their friends, changing the culture of the network and resulting in dilution. Problem number 3. Too much content. Finally, Chen explains that when a network grows to a certain size, it often begins to offer more content than users are able to effectively sort through. This can degrade the user experience and cause users to leave. For example, if your board game app receives too many postings about different groups that play a wide range of different games, it becomes more difficult for users to find the few groups relevant to them. This also hurts group organizers, who find it harder to stand out amid the ocean of postings. To fix this, connect users to the content they came to the network for. Chen highlights one solution in particular: since you have access to a huge network of user data, you can create precise discovery algorithms to help users find the experience they're looking for. Short form note: algorithms designed to solve the problem of too much content by giving users more of what they want to see unfortunately have some harmful side effects. Researchers both inside and outside of social media corporations have concluded that some networks' discovery algorithms disproportionately spread political disinformation and hateful sentiments. Similarly, one study found that Facebook's algorithm favors news outlets that align with the user's existing beliefs, contributing to political polarization. Step number 5. Ward off challenges. Once you've pushed through all the negative effects of growth, you'll be a dominant market leader, earning massive profits. Chen explains that at this point, the network effect works in your favor. Potential competitors lack the benefits of your network that we discussed in step number 3, so it's much more difficult for them to field a comparable product. Short form note: although your hard work has brought you a massive advantage over competitors in the form of network effect benefits, such an advantage can turn into a disadvantage if it negatively impacts your mindset. In Ego is the Enemy, Ryan Holiday argues that success often curses people with the egocentric feelings of entitlement, paranoia, and an obsession with control. Any of these 3 mindsets can trigger irrational decisions and sabotage your success, so make a conscious effort to monitor your feelings and keep your ego in check. Chen notes that now, all that's left to do is maintain your position as a market leader by closely monitoring your competitors and making sure they can't convert substantial portions of your users. Adjust your user acquisition strategies and your product to convince users to choose you over competitors, then verify that your adjustments are effective. This requires a lot of data analysis. By studying user data you've collected as well as data purchased from external sources, you can get ideas for how to convert competitors' users, and you can track the impact your strategies have on user behavior. Avoid making beating competitors your primary goal. Chen frames this stage of the startup process as a cutthroat competition against your closest competitors. However, in the infinite game, Simon Sinek argues that you should see your competitors as friendly rivals and avoid making your goal to thwart their success. Companies that obsess over beating their competitors have less motivated and less inspired employees than companies that focus on achieving a noble mission. Sinek would likely approve of Chen's suggestion to gather data on your competitors with the intention of improving your product. However, as opposed to Chen's suggestion to use this data to steal competitors' users, Sinek would argue that you benefit most by using this data primarily to learn from your competitors and use their ideas to offer a better service to users. According to Sinek, learning from your competitors is much more difficult when your only mission is to beat them. Setting competition as your primary goal motivates you to focus on ways that your company is better than them, meaning you ignore their strengths and don't learn from them.